now. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. My name is Michelle Wells, and I am the Adult Services Director for the Southeast Steuben County Library in Corning, New York. I also run the Corning Area Writers Group. I would like to thank the Friends of the Library, SSC, in part for making this program possible through their funding. This program is also made possible in part by the QuickARTS grant program, administered by the Arts Council of the Southern Finger Lakes and funded by the Community Foundation of Elmira-Corning and the Finger Lakes, Inc. Akua Lezli Hope uses sound, words, fiber, glass, metal, and wire to create poems, patterns, stories, music, sculpture, adornments, and peace. She wrote her first speculative poems in the 6th grade and has been in print every year since 1974 with over 400 poems published, although I think that might be more now. Her collections include Embouchure, Poems on Jazz and Other Musics, Writer's Digest Book Award winner, Them Gone, and Otherwhere Speculative Poetry, the 2021 Elgin Award winner, and Stratospherics, a micro chapbook of sci-fi coup available from the Quarantine Public Library. A Cave Canem Fellow, her honors include the NEA, 2 NIFAs, an SFPA award, and multiple Riesling and Pushcart Prize nominations. She has won Rattles Poets Respond twice and launched Speculative Sundays, an online poetry reading series. Her work has also been published in numerous literary magazines and national anthologies, including the Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction, the 100 Best African American Poems, Dark Matter, A Century of Speculative Fiction from the African Diaspora, Asimov's Science Fiction, Gyroscope Review, Pensive, a global journal of spirituality and the arts, Strange Horizons, Starline, Sci-Fi Qist, Eye to the Telescope, The New Verse News, Breath and Shadow, The Crafty Poet 2, a portable workshop, The Cossack Review, Silverblade Magazine, Stone Canoe, and 3 Coyotes. She edited the first anthology of BIPOC speculative poetry, Nambono, published in October of last year by Sundress Publications and available on their website. She also recently edited the largest issue of Eye to the Telescope on the Sea, published by the Science Fiction and Fantasy Association in October. Over 700 poems from 236 poets were submitted. Last year, she won a 2022 NISCA Individual Artist Grant to write speculative Afrofuturist pastoral poetry. Please join me in welcoming Akua Lezli Hope.
Thank you for that fabulous introduction, Michelle. And thank you to our sponsors and to the library that you work at that holds it down here in the Southern Finger Lakes. I'm speaking to you from the ancestral land of the Onondaga, also known as the Seneca, keepers of the Western Door in the area currently called the Southern Finger Lakes region of New York State. I pay homage to the Seneca past, present, and future, as I do to my own ancestors by whose grace I exist and am sustained. I want to do a little verbal libation. Libation as when we pour the liquor, the drink to our ancestors who are gone. All praises to those who have gone before, those on whose shoulders we stand, by whose wings we are lifted, through whose metal we are shielded, with whose fire we are warmed, in whose embrace we are sheltered, whose breath inflates our lungs. All praises to those who struggled and strove, those who studied and sang, those who invented and wrote, those who planted, on whose water we flowed, are quenched, are fed, those who fought, those who bled. Thank you for dying for we. Thank you for trying for we, striving for we. Thank you for crying for we, hoping for we, coping for we. Thank you for hustling for we, suffering for we, working for we. Thank you for being for we, scheming for we, dreaming for we. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All praises. Juneteenth is the oldest known celebration celebrating the end of slavery in the United States. Dating back to 1865, it was on June 19th that Union soldiers, led by Major General Gordon Granger, landed at Galveston, Texas, with news that the war had ended and that the enslaved were now free. Now note, this is 2.5 horrible years after President Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation, which had become official January 1st, 1863. The Emancipation Proclamation had little impact on Texans due to the minimal number of Union troops to enforce the new executive order. However, with the surrender of General Lee in April of 1865 and the arrival of General Granger's regiment, the forces were finally strong enough to influence and overcome the resistance. Why the delay? 2.5 years? One story. A messenger was murdered on the way to Texas with the news of freedom. Another story is that the news was deliberately withheld by enslavers to maintain the labor force on their plantations. And still another is that federal troops actually waited for the slave owners to reap the benefits of one last cotton harvest before going to Texas to enforce the Emancipation Proclamation. I'm going to begin the poetry readings with a local hero. John W. Jones was born in 1817, so this is the 205th anniversary of his birth. There's a museum for him in Elmira if you happen to be in this area. And the rest of him, I think the verse will make clear. John W. Jones shook the shackles off his soul, walked 300 miles to reach his goal, escaped wretched slavery in 1843. Arriving in Elmira, where he laid down his burden, free, stayed, picked up learning, literacy, worked hard, bought land, made a family. Reading and God were the keys to his energetic, shining legacy. He buried the dead of his enemies, recording each Southern soldier carefully. Nearly 3,000 bodies he committed to the earth, shaped a place for survivors to visit and mourn, a quiet, sacred space that still lives on as testimony to those lost, long gone. There was wisdom in his forgiveness. His spiritual wealth became material. Rewards for his service increased his holdings and his land. knowing many shared his aspirations for dignity, prosperity, and salvation from slavery's endless humiliations before emancipation had a proclamation. There was a special stop in Elmira, moving folks safely on trains to Canada. He was a station master on the Underground Railroad. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of souls he enabled to be free, that a new future could unfold, making a way out of no way. He created generations of possibilities. We lift up John Jones' name to praise his works in those cruel, unjust days. See his acts as extraordinary, his diligence, his rigor, his plan to save and change his situation, his resolve to take a stand, to press toward the mark, keep his eyes on the prize. As he led himself to freedom, he also saved 800 others' lives. The lesson of John W. Jones' life in a time of deep denial and strife creates success even if there's no model. Always reach out, always reach back, help others move up, move on, make a way to help others ever on. Kingdom's glory road to freedom, sing the Lord's song. And remembering John W. Jones, we honor his spirit of nonviolent resistance and our own unfailing resilience, our connection to the transcendent, our perseverance, strength, and goodness, our connection to God, our connection to the transcendent, our perseverance, strength, and goodness, our connection to God. John W. Jones. This is from John Henrik Clarke, his words. Nowhere in the annals of history has a people experienced such a long and traumatic ordeal as Africans during the Atlantic slave trade. Over the nearly 4 centuries of the slave, which continued until the end of the Civil War, millions of African men, women, and children were savagely torn from their homelands, herded into ships, and dispersed all over the so-called New World. Although there is no way to compute exactly how many people perished, it has been estimated that between 30 and 60 million Africans were subjected to this horrendous triangular trade system, and that only 1/3, if that, of those people survived. Dr. John Henrik Clarke, esteemed scholar, elder. These next two poems are a pair that I am deeply honored and gratified to say appear in the new anthology, Black Fire This Time. And I'm shifting the pages to see if I can read you the inscript. The inscript comes at the end of the second, but since you're not reading it, I will read it to you so you know what it's about. Igbo Landing, and it's spelled I-G-B-O sometimes. Igbo Landing is a historic site at Dunbar Creek on St. Simon's Island in Glynn County, Georgia, where in 1803, 75 Igbo captives, after drowning their captors and running the ship York aground, marched ashore singing and walked into Dunbar Creek, committing mass suicide. 13 bodies were recovered. The rest remain missing. In 2002, the site was declared holy ground. This is Ebo Landing 1. We are incomprehensible to you who feel only fear when you hear us. Spider silk on face, chill up back, which is a success perhaps to have both sugar and fat, to die of excess and sloth, not like we hungry wraiths whose forgotten flesh was sinew, whose non-existent options were to live death or die living, whose path was clear, undo or be undone. Our drowned captors are silent. Their injustice muzzles them. We sang the song of home going, a freedom-bound journey as we drowned with determination, deliberation, avowals to never surrender, to die and return from whence we came, from where we were stolen, to resist and not submit, calling to our God, Chukwu, for escort or conveyance, for admission to the next phase, the existence beyond this terrible land, out of reach of horrible hands, those who would eat our souls, bite bit after bit, daily flay flesh from our backs, lynch us, take our babies, rape our young ones, and in that future in which you tremble by our whispers, lingering laments, you would believe such theft was chosen? And that is what frightens you. You hear our reverberating answers echoing through the water, slow lapping sounds, waves creeping on the land, our avowals. We consecrated our commitment, how we said no with our lives, for our lives, how we refused that hell on land, making generations of grist for the hideous mill of rogue capital, the codified caprice of robbers. We, brothers, sisters, daughters, sons, clear-willed, strong-souled, liberty-led, freedom-fed, returned to Mother Water. Out of 75, only 13 were found drowned. The rest of us lifted, transmuted, flew. The rest of us lifted, transmuted, flew. Ebo Landing 2. We don't want to remember you. We peasants, unendowed with vision, we mundane, unschooled in magic, we who did not hear the trumpet, who could not hear the call of Damballa, smell the sweet perfume of Oshun, who were too young to be initiated, or too old to lend our ears, or too tired to rise up, or too fearful to lay down our lives, who live in hope of rescue, who live in disbelief, who live in margins and by increments, who can live for centuries on one half breath, submerged in the unbreathable, gasping, half garroted, yoked. We are the frightened and the fail to nonetheless persist, who turned back from your revolutionary act. From our punished loins comes the future. From our conscript wombs, generations issue. From water to water, not dust, and with birth pains, blue whales that fill the lungs entry with their first breath, still knowing we applauded only for increase, for marrow and meat, for narrowing contortions, for bending and hoeing and reaping, not for inheritance, not for the welcoming of generations, still somehow loved as flesh loves its continuance, its reflection. We don't want to remember you, stark indictment of our bleak being. Your refusal to be one with us, dark, broken, stolen, caged, conscripted, duped, disputed, colonized cargo, fettered, unfortunate losers in history's lottery. We who write you now into being, we unwilling, subjugated, who whispered you into being, who dressed the picked and disappearing bones of your incomprehensibility into quilts of remembrance, patches of precious, precious recollection, sewn, stitched, summoned, anointed, despite ourselves, saved, connected into patterns of soul song, images of your winged and watery triumph painted with future sky, inner longings, unsuppressible, persistent, gut string, blind in our belief. See now, pattern of decisions tattooed on our wavering soul flesh, our lost millions undecisioned, unmoored, untethered, living in terror, policed by madness, who still somehow maintain memory, hid it, fed it from armpit to rib, from roof, mouth roof to knee bend. Oh, blooded land of benighted bones, our stolen teeth and mouth of its president, planted, arise in multiplicities to battle what we don't want to remember. How unmaking is an option? How unlife is as understandable as the struggle to be? Those broken dreams became song. Rice growers grew rice. Ironmongers forged mute protections, wrought steel, spiritual blues. We told each other anyway. We told each other while we spoke to the cotton and the yam and the cane, whose mills were baptized with our blood, our lost limbs. We told each other, say we won't remember. We told each other, but we have no choice. We told each other, but we have no choice but to. You know, there are people in your life, if you're lucky, whose wonder unfolds over the years and over time. And I'm ashamed to say it took me a while, well, you'll see in this poem, to understand. Brown Mary. I didn't like the woman named Mary. Mary was shy. Mary was plain. Mary was uncomplaining. Mary's eyes were always wet and her smile always strained. Her hands trembled and her high voice trembled in its soft drawl. She loved me, loud, brash, undainty, impatient, ungentle. Why would she ask for me? Why did she ever care? Send books, send money, and ask for me? Many years later, Mother finally told. Mary marched with the marchers, sat with the sitters, strode the long trail, was jeered at and jailed, beaten to tremble, worn to strain. She rode with the freedom riders. She too was young once and was ever, ever brave. Brown Mary. The first time I heard the word used on me, the word. Laurelton, New York, 1963, as I made my way home from PS 156. Never heard it in that sweet South Bronx in the 50s or those first years of the 60s. I knew it from watching fire-hosed German shepherd seized children on TV. I knew it as it landed on my ears as I dodged stones and placards, saw ugly, angry face, housewives chanting that we should not be there. We weren't fourth, fifth, sixth graders anymore, running to Merrick Boulevard, running to the bus traveled for intellectually gifted children, opportunity classes. In that land of lawn, garages, grills, backyards, one family homes, our own tree-filled streets. We weren't boys and girls. We were besieged. We became one and we became Black, and we asked each other across grades and classes, whose mothers were these? None of them recognizable, none of their children, none smart enough to sit next to us. Rosa Parks. Sister Rosa, we know you did not just sit down. The myth we made of your act befogs the potholed road of facts, long journey to your defiance, your training in nonviolence in the piney woods, church sisters furrowing, breaking hard, uncivil ground into ready rows. You were not the first choice to carry this seed. The other, less exemplary, could not withstand white scrutiny if shoved into national lights. Dismissible, shameable in her single motherhood. Oh, how wise sisters understood. You, Rosa, were impeccable, impermeably good and married and golden. But the truth, far grander than fatigue, that our struggle strategized in word and deed, more than outbursts, more than anger, more than one hot day's insult or need. That patient, steady planning knows the hunger it must feed, an image little Davids must sling through the giant's ugly head. Guided, oh, guided by praying dreamers, singing out to God, ready from within. Rosa Parks. I didn't write the dedication for this poem, but this poem is very much, this next poem is very much about this particular place that I live in. And I will say now that my friend has died, that this is for Penny and Victor and Hunter, hard-won country. She drives him to school through this hard-won rural suburbia, where the only visible thorns adorn scant thistle and rose bushes, reaching spring branches through chain link fences. No yellow bus for him, no MTA. He will be safely ferried to learn and play. The shouts that rocked the bus she rode, where the quick northern mob gathered to torment her elementary way home from gifted classes, will never reach his ears. He'll never have to dodge the sudden legs or feet in dirty, narrow aisles as he makes his way to the once pre-designated rear. Neither will he hear those low, ancient moans from stench-drenched vessels, lynch tree and jailhouse groans, nor their reverberating why. She will stand guard against even her fear, memory, pain. Use bleach every Saturday, dust, vacuum, sponsor play dates, host thrill-packed birthday parties, drive the Jeep made for snow, rain, and this ever-changing terrain. Each day convey her son to school, soccer, safety, success. Hard-won country. And this is the other side for Hunter and Victor and Penny. Building history lullaby. You are the history we build. You won't remember this. I came to see your first play. You are the narrator. Your proud mother invited me, and we bear witness to your triumph. Oh, lone Black boy. I clap and clap and clap and take pictures and praise you excessively for your part in the Three Piggy Opera. Such is my joy to do again the unremembered thing you will most forget. My siblings don't remember stories I read them, nor our tea parties, but their children are read to and play elaborate pretends. To give you the gift we had. So much love you don't have to remember. Someone will always be there. Others will always know and ask for you. Someone will always care. It will be a link, a chain, a plate in your invisible armor to arise and wrap you in the force field of our hope for you and your promise. Building history lullaby. And I'm at my last poem for this evening. Freedom, Juneteenth, 1996. We can all emerge perfected in our later years. We can forgive ourselves, our foibles, failures, fears, and know earth, sun, wind, sea, innocent, indifferent, clear, and so forgive the fire and the forge, and so forgive the cradle and the grave. Freedom. Thank you for listening. Happy Juneteenth.
Thank you.
Thank you. we have time for a bit of conversation, I think. Let's, for 5 minutes maybe. Are there any questions or comments or?
I wish you had been my history teacher. It was much more interesting than memorizing names and dates.
That sounds like Joan. Was that Joan?
Yes.
I
Yes.
recognize her voice. Hi, thank you, Joan. Thank you.
Hi, Leslie. It's your Akua. It's your friend Judy.
Hi, Judy, my Judy. I got
Yeah.
my Judy and my Linda and my Eileen. Hi, Judy. I'm so glad
Hi.
you're here.
Thank you, and I learned a lot. So thank you.
Oh, thank you for coming, Judy. You're such a
Always.
wonderful stalwart and support. I know you're shy. You're going to go. Okay, thank you, Judy.
Okay. Okay. Bye. I mean, I'll
Bye,
be here.
bye.
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 I was just going to, I don't know if this is much a question, but maybe in a way it is. I mean, growing up, there was no Juneteenth holiday for me.
For me
And
neither. For me either.
yeah, yeah. And for me now, I find it is every year I learn something new because it puts that highlight on it. So I love that. I really love how your as has been mentioned before by someone else, that your poetry actually also teaches so much. Can you maybe talk about when you had the moment that you remember of learning about this holiday?
Because it was very recent in life. So
Mhm.
Linda, I don't know if you saw in the ad or the descriptor for the reading, it talks about that I first learned about Juneteenth coming to Corning, New York, where there were Black folks from all around the world and the US. And I first heard of it in, I'd say like 1990. And then in 1993, worked on a committee with others to establish Juneteenth, the Juneteenth celebration here in Corning and in this part of the world. So it was folks from the South. I don't remember anyone from Texas in particular. And that's interesting to me too, because I went to college with folks from Texas and don't remember them telling me about it. But again, late 80s, early 90s, I heard about it. And 1993 was when we created the first commemoration. And there are some folks who work with me on it who are sadly gone, but I want to raise the name, if you're local, of Dick Riddick, who taught generations of young people to play music. He happened to be from Harlem, New York also. He played the congas. He used to accompany me, but he taught folks, even though he didn't really play, he taught folks the guitar, the piano. He made music. He played in a number of groups here, but Dick was a co-performer at our first Juneteenth. So yeah, for me, it was late in life, 93. And should I say how old I was in 93?
Well, you know, I don't mind telling my age, but that's totally up to you, darling.
I won't do it this time. Sometimes I love to, right? And other times I don't. But okay, so let me count. 1993. So when I was 40, which for me is late in life, because I've been celebrating Kwanzaa from when I was 17, right? So Kwanzaa entered my life very early. But Juneteenth, I didn't meet until, and I thought it was marvelous. Number one, it's in June, and I'm a Gemini, so it's in the warm time of year, not just the cold time of year. And the lessons, I try to do it in prose because I knew if I just talked about it, I might vary, but the lesson of even in being free, we weren't free, you know, there's, and the struggle continues, like, you know, so who am I, what am I saying now? The struggle continues, but that to me was shocking. And so the celebration for me is as much an education, a reminder that the law isn't the law until you make it the law. It's still a lived and breathing thing that you have to claim and own and support and enforce.
Truly.
Thank you for asking. Anyone else? Or anything else? If not, I will bid you all adieu. My thanks again to Michelle Wells in the library. Michelle works hard to make these programs happen, and I'm delighted to be able to speak to the community, to have this exchange and communication. And I'll
Thank you
leave it
so
to
much for
Michelle.
sharing. Sorry.
No, I'm saying it's
Just
you.
wanted to say thank you so
Thank-
much for sharing your words and your wisdom with us.
Thank you. Thank you. Good night. Be well.